Good evening, everyone. If you don't know, you should know. My name is Rameez and I am a filmmaker and a film critic. And today's movie is a movie I was waiting for a long time, and it came out here very late. Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs is returning to Apple.
Two most significant events of the 20th century. The Allies win the war, and this.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Jobs.
Now, there's a reason why I was waiting for this film for a long time. Because one of my favorite filmmakers of all time is directing this film. Danny Boyle, arguably the greatest filmmaker to come out of the 2000s. The man has quite an unparalleled grasp on visual storytelling and crisp editing. He made a hideously underrated film about amnesia, trance. It actually made amnesia cool again. And he made a story about 127 hours, which features a man trapped in that set rock for 127 hours, condensed into 90 minutes. It was a piece on the will to live and the nature of human beings. An awesome movie, and he won an Oscar for Slumdog Millionaire. Enough said. I was absolutely delighted when I heard that Danny Boyle is going to be taking over directing duties from David Fincher, who was previously attached to this project. We've seen what David Fincher can do with Aaron Sorkin, The Social Network. He won a screenwriting Oscar for that, Aaron Sorkin. I believed, and I turned out to be correct when I predicted that Danny Boyle could possibly make Sorkin's work a bit more breathable and more entertaining, apart from just walking and talking dialogues. Aaron Sorkin's script does have greatness, but it does have its fair share of problems as well. The cool part about this script is this is as basic as you're going to get to a 3-act structure in a film. Literally, this film is 3 scenes and 3 conversations with the same people over and over and over. The genius is the same conversations never get boring. Seth Rogen, Steve Wozniak begged Steve Jobs from the very beginning to credit the Apple II team. Jeff Daniels is Scully, and Steve Jobs have an argument about the company's future. In all 3 conversations, Kate Winslet, who is exceptional as Steve Jobs' assistant, wants Steve to patch up his personal life. It never gets boring. This film looks stunning, and the high point of this film comes in the 2nd act, which is a flashback, where Steve Jobs is reminded of his sacking at Apple by CEO Jeff Scully, played by the amazing Jeff Daniels. It plays out like a reflection of a man, and it shows all of his wrongdoings, but it furthers his arrogance as well, and most importantly, the plot. I love this scene because of its editing. His emotions of the past fit the conversation of today, and we see this pattern and painting of a man who is willing to defend his ideas by hurting people, and we see how he ignores that same fact and continues to hurt people by speaking and speaking and speaking. The problem with this film, however, is Steve Jobs himself, the character himself. He has a very weak character arc. In the beginning of the film, we're introduced to this idea that Steve Jobs is a douche. We only see other people reacting towards him. And guess what? By the end of the film, Steve Jobs acknowledges that he's a douche. That's it. Yeah, so friggin' weak. It's very similar but very unlike The Social Network's ending, which has almost the same character arc, where Mark Zuckerberg realizes that he's a dick too. You have that little physical human touch of him admitting to his mistakes by hitting that add friend button on Facebook. As I said though, Danny Boyle's visual style kinda makes up for it. This film takes place in 3 time periods, 1984, 1988, and 98. Obviously, technology is very different, and film is very different. So 1984 was shot on 16mm film, 1988 was shot on 35mm film, and finally in 98 it was all shot digitally. Not only is this a good way of accurately timestamping your movie, but it also sells this idea of Steve Jobs' mind, that the technology wasn't good enough to catch up to his products. I should have talked about this earlier, but Michael Fassbender plays Steve Jobs, and he's pretty good, but it's nothing to talk about, nothing to rave about, as he's playing a douche. And I think you've plateaued that aspect of Michael Fassbender's acting range, because he played a pretty good dick in 12 Years a Slave. I don't think you can ever go above that. This is a great film about conflicting ideas and the bureaucracy of companies interfering with a man's visions. I love that it shows Steve Jobs for who he was, a prick. 3.5 out of 5 for Steve Jobs. Visually, it's fantastic. Danny Boyle does a better job with Aaron Sorkin's script than Fincher did, and that's saying a lot. But as an overall product, this film is not as good as Fincher's The Social Network, and it's slightly weaker than Danny Boyle's previous films. So yeah, people, that's my review. Thank you for watching this review. If you liked it, hit that like button. If you've seen Steve Jobs, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Remember to hit subscribe and remember to love yourselves.